I'm presenting on gender inclusive language for lactation consultations. So some of this may be familiar to us, some of it may be new, and it's an area that I feel pretty strongly about, and it's something that I've worked on myself in terms of creating more inclusive language. So I guess the first question is, why is this important? Well, for obvious reasons. People access healthcare when they feel respected. People will disclose medical details if they feel safe. And people actively seek out environments in which they will be accepted. So we want to create an environment of safety. And safety is the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. And of course, first and foremost, we seek to do no harm within the medical field at least. And so we want to create a place of safety for everyone that we are meeting with. This is a new ABM, Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine clinical protocol that just came out this year, number 33. Lactation care for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer, questioning plus patients. It's an excellent document. I would highly recommend that you become familiar with it. I've read it through a few times and I've found it very helpful. I think it's a really significant piece to add to the care of lactating families. So I've just highlighted some things here with regards to some points that I found quite helpful. When concerned about discrimination in healthcare settings, patients frequently do not self-disclose their identities. Nearly 1/3 of individuals reported that none of their healthcare providers knew their gender status. So that would be a hindrance to appropriate care in some situations. So one of the ways we can recognize and affirm patients' names, pronouns, and family members as a cornerstone of providing affirming care. And that's what we're seeking to do, is to provide affirming care in order to create a safe space. Also over here, the medical care is often inadequate, ranging from a failure of healthcare professionals to recognize their unique needs, to the enforced use of heteronormative procedures, such as registering a trans man as a woman in their medical record. And then further down here, pregnant people and parents who identify as LGBTQ+, therefore need access to non-traditional lactation supports that may be unfamiliar to healthcare providers. And so some of those things that may be unfamiliar to us would be some new terms. Some examples are over here: assigned female at birth or assigned male at birth. Chest feeding, colactation are some of the terms that are becoming a little more frequent within the lactation field. So how do we create a safe space? Well, obviously we use inclusive language, we avoid making assumptions, we follow the client's lead, we set an example by stating our own pronoun use, and we understand that gender is fluid. I always get a bit of a kick out of the gender reveal parties that are so popular nowadays, because I'm thinking, well, we're not really revealing the gender, we're revealing the genital development of a fetus, and gender is fluid and it can change throughout a person's lifetime. So when we are introducing ourselves or when we're meeting with a client, one of the ways to be really respectful is to simply follow that patient or client's lead. So here this individual is saying, if you have a partner, they, so there's no assumption of he or she, they are welcome to attend next time. And then the client or patient says, yes, my husband said he would like to join. And so then the individual, the care provider, follows suit by saying, great, let your husband know he is welcome to do so. And so that's just being very respectful about allowing the person in front of us to really follow their lead. So some examples of inclusive language. Instead of saying pregnant woman, we can try using pregnant person. Might sound a little bit unusual at first, but as we use it more and more, it becomes the norm. Instead of motherhood or fatherhood, we can say parenthood. Instead of breastfeeding, we can say nursing or human milk feeding. Interesting. I find that nursing tends to be a term that we use when we start referring to older children, you know, age 2, 3, 4, who are milk feeding, but we will often say nursing. I think that recognizes that so much more than a transfer of calories is happening. It's very much a relationship. Or we can simply say human milk feeding. And one of the reasons why we might get away from breastfeeding is simply because breast has become so sexualized in our culture that not everyone's comfortable with it. And also in terms of a trans masculine person, that word breast can be very off-putting and uncomfortable. Instead of husband or wife, we can use partner, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, or spouse, or even co-parent. And then instead of breast milk, I think this is pretty well standard nowadays, we can use human milk instead, or expressed human milk, or simply milk or food. And of course, the question there is, why do we need to specify that it's milk from the breast? This is simply the milk that is designed for humans, so it is human milk, or simply milk. A few more examples: parental leave instead of paternity or maternity leave, pregnancy leave instead of maternity leave. Birthing parent or lactating parent are two newer terms that are very inclusive with regards to gender. Gestational carrier is a term we might hear used in situations of surrogacy. And chest feeding for non-binary or trans-masculine people. So with regards to pronouns, I've just given an example here. Hi, I'm Krista, and the pronouns I use are she or her. Admittedly, I haven't started doing that yet. I hope that I'm going to get there. At the moment, what I am doing is I copied this email signature because I was quite impressed by it. It sends a subtle message here where she's just simply put her pronouns in brackets after her name. So I did follow suit with my email signature, and that's just a very subtle yet powerful way to send a message of inclusivity. And then when we're talking about gender, we are often talking about female or male, but for many people that may too restrictive. And so the term that we need to become familiar with is non-binary. And so there's a really helpful definition here of what is meant by non-binary. The key right here being 2 boxes are not enough to fit the diversity of human gender identities and experiences. I found an example of that on the College of Physician and Surgeons of Ontario website. When you can do a doctor search and you're searching for a family doctor or specialist, I've noticed that now you can choose female, male, or non-binary. And that's a recent change that I was very impressed to find on the website. So back to the protocol. These are things that are suggested within the protocol, that introductions to a patient can include a provider's own pronouns, which may make the patient feel more at ease sharing their pronoun. And it is most respectful to ensure that patients have the opportunity to identify which words they would like to use for their visit at the beginning of the visit. So further to that, intake forms should be updated to include more options. Now, in this particular protocol, it says gender, pronouns, and sexual orientation. I'm not sure that I agree that we should be asking for sexual orientation, but certainly to provide a place to identify pronouns is sending a very strong message. Displaying signs, statements of inclusivity is a subtle but impactful way to acknowledge individuals with gender and sexual diversities. Setting a welcoming tone. I included this screenshot here because I really like the first sentence right here. I let all my new patients know early on that I work with many diverse people. Therefore, I welcome you to share anything that you feel is relevant for me to know in order to make sure I provide you with the best possible care. I love how inclusive that statement is. It's very non-threatening. It's just creating a safe space for disclosure. So affirming care is the goal here. Affirming care refers to care that supports the patient's gender identity and must include inclusive terminology, practices, and knowledgeable providers. Patients will know immediately by their first encounter with a care provider or by the content of the registration forms whether affirming care is provided. Patients will quickly determine how safe the environment is and choose what to share accordingly. And I just wanted to share this screenshot here about the book, Where's the Mother? Some of us may be familiar with. Stories from a Transgender Dad. It was written by Trevor McDonald, who is a Canadian advocate for transgender dads. You see a screenshot here of him meeting with Dr. Jack Newman, who helped him with latching. He did have top surgery, so there wasn't much tissue for him to latch, but he managed it. And you can see down here, there's a shot of him using an SNS. And this is his blog, Milk Junkies. And I would encourage us to perhaps visit it and read a little bit. I find it very informative, very helpful, and a really great way to become familiar with newer terms. These are the references that I used, some from the web here. Here's the ABM clinical protocol number 33 that I drew on heavily. And then these four links at the bottom here are from Transcare BC. And I think that was within 10 minutes.